Alright, welcome to class here today at CQDTonline.com. First that I'm going to do is explain to you what center line is. If your opponent is standing, say with their arms slightly out and their feet spread, I'm going to show you at an angle that's easy for you to see. You have a couple of areas that you want to strike your opponent if you want to make sure that he is disabled enough to not continue to attack you. Sight, air, and mobility, SAM. Sight meaning, obviously, his eyes. If you strike an eye, it takes nothing more than a piece of sand to make you react a little bit and kind of drive you crazy with an eye. Just a quick flick across the eye, just a quick touch is enough to get your opponent to react enough to possibly allow you to escape. Throat. All a trachea is just C-shaped rings of cartilage. Striking a trachea, striking the throat in any manner really, is obnoxious. Even if you just tap on it, you can tell it's a sensitive area. So any kind of jabbing, any kind of strike that you do to the throat is going to cause a reaction or enough of a reaction for you to be able to get away also. As we move down center line, we get towards the groin. The groin is obviously a sensitive area to be struck on a guy or a girl, and we can be using our knees for this, we could be using shin kicks, we could be using kicks with the feet for this. Different strikes in order to take advantage of that also. So as we go down center line, we see that there are some useful areas to attack. And as we come down to the knees, that's where we get to mobility, or at least the first stop at mobility. Anything that you do to strain, sprain, or break a joint on your opponent, whether it be knees, wrists, elbow, shoulder, neck, for example. But first being knees is what we're going to go over. Anything that you can do to strain or sprain or break their mobility is going to allow them to not come forward at you any longer. So with a knee, for example, if they can't walk right on one leg, it's uncommon that they're going to continue to chase you after you start to run. So we saw as center line goes down, sight, air, and mobility. Now how do we take advantage of those? Why do we take advantage of those? If I'm a smaller opponent, maybe a weaker opponent, and I'm going strike for strike with this person, it's unlikely that I'm going to win, unless I'm a professional boxer. But assuming that not everybody on this website is a professional fighter, professional martial artist, we don't want to give them any kind of advantage, or we don't want to allow them to have an advantage that they might have if they were a fighter. We want to take advantage of things that are a little bit easier for us to do, and that we can apply our natural reactions to for the autonomic response training. In this particular case, we've been teaching from the triangle, and we're going to go over that just one more time. As your opponent comes around, say for a hook, and your natural reaction may be to just throw your hands up. I'm going to give you a better angle. We went over, if you were just going to put your hands up anyway, just put your right hand over your left forearm, and you're here in your triangle now. Now you just made a triangle with your arms as the first two sides of the triangle and your body as the third. I'm not doing this and making a triangle. I'm not sticking my hands all the way out to make a triangle and make it look like this. I'm keeping my elbows slightly bent and I'm keeping my shoulders up so that as he comes around, I have power to stop. And this shape, this structure is going to hold very well for you. Regardless of your strength and regardless of your size, you're going to see when you work with your partner that as you cut, you're here. You're in your defensive posture or you're in your fighting stance. He comes around and you just throw that up. Because that's what your natural reaction would have been anyway, to just throw this up. So all you're doing is changing it just a little bit, so that you can defend yourself with it. We're going to use that same triangle when somebody comes forward. That same triangle to move out of the way. Okay? To move here. To cut. Okay? And I'm going to show you that in another angle. So just real quick, reviewing the triangle from the hook. All you're doing is just putting this up. Here. Putting this up and cutting into his forearm. So we see that as we start to work the triangle from the hook, as we work the triangle from the cross, we see that we're able to use our natural reaction of just putting our hands up and backing up to making the triangle and just pushing just a little bit forward so that we can cut that opponent's angle. So his angle coming from the side can be cut. His angle coming from the front can be cut. This can be done with people from any size, any height, any strength. It doesn't matter. As long as your natural reaction is what most people's natural reaction is, and then you can just do that very simple change, you're able to use your autonomic responses to these stimuli to work better for your favor in reality-based situations. Now, what do we do afterwards? What do we do after we prevent being hit? After we prevent being hit from coming around? Maybe even if you're a woman and it's just an abusive guy coming across to slap across, it's the exact same technique if somebody's coming to slap across the face here. It's the same thing. What do you do to follow up after that? Well, besides just preventing and then being able to run, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because if he's hitting you once, he's probably not just going to try and hit you and then just let you run away and then he's just going to stand there and watch you leave. Generally, you're going to want to do a follow-up. You remember in the beginning of class we talked about center line that contains sight, air, and mobility. Now, if you want to just strike back and forth with the person, or if you like to enter and start using your elbows, start using your knees, start using your headbutts, elbows, those are things that you can do if those are the types of techniques that you're comfortable with. But say you were somebody who was a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit weaker, and you didn't want to be throwing elbows and knees, you're not comfortable with that, maybe the man's too big, it's just a bad situation for that type of close quarter combat, maybe you want to strike a vital so you can leave sooner. This opens up center line again. We have now access to sight, access to air, access to mobility. I may want to just cover here, cover as I come forward, and not even have to move him, but just come straight in for just a quick flick across the eyes, for a finger jab, for a throat jab. I may want to, after I come in here, immediately after I cover, I'm going to switch the angle for you because I'm about to attack the knee. After I come straight up here, I may want to just come straight in with my shin across the inside of his knee and break it to the outside. Okay, maybe not break it to the outside, maybe just strain it. Okay, depending on what kind of strike, how hard you strike it. Either way, you're going to strain that joint so that he can't chase you. Okay, so that he can't effectively catch you after you leave. Either way, you protect yourself with your autonomic response after he comes around. You decide quickly whatever comes out first. If you're here and this comes out first, bing, his eyes are right there. You come straight across the eyes. If you decide to follow through into the throat, that's fine too. Or if you decide right afterwards that you just want to exit stage left and take his knee with you, as you leave, that's fine too. So regardless of what you choose, regardless of sight, air, or mobility that you choose to do, instead of just striking back and forth with him, you have these options using your autonomic response training. If he's coming straight forward, and you use the triangle here, notice how I just throw my hands up. You use that cut. This opens up sight. This opens up air. This opens up mobility. You may not be in center line right now. Okay? You may be to his outside, but if you were to his inside in this case, and you were to cut, his hand is already here. And it's a little bit faster for somebody to throw 2 strikes forward than it is for them to throw 2 strikes around the outside. So when he came around the outside, it was okay for us to use center line here because this hand isn't going to come as fast. But it's likely that after he swings the first one, that next one's coming right away. So it's better for us to be on the outside of him so that he can't reach us. Best in this case, I'm going to switch angles for you again. Best in this case, again, all I'm doing is the same technique over and over again. Don't get confused with this. All I'm doing is just throwing up my hands into these triangles and moving forward. Okay? Triangles being on either hand. Practice either way. Whichever way is more comfortable for you. Left over your right forearm, right over your left forearm. As he comes in, I'm now on his outside. Notice how if he were to want to swing this hand, he has to cross his body. Okay? Mobility is the easiest for me to take from this particular angle. I'm already here. All I have to do is just come straight in for it. You understand? He comes straight in. All I have to do is come straight in for it. That's the easiest. If I want to come up to the eyes, that's also simple because my hand is already here. I just come straight across. So in this case, cutting in from the cross, from him trying to hit you in the nose here, you cut, you either come straight across, just that flick across the eyes, or you come in for the knee as you leave, and then you continue, and then you exit. This is how you get out of a situation. This is how you go home safely. This is how you survive on the street using these vitals. Again, you have your basic strikes. You have basic headbutts, knees, and elbows that you can use. You have basic joint locking and things like that that you'll learn on the website. But those things, okay, when used in a situation that's deadly for you, aren't always the most safe options. A lot of times it's best to just use a sight air mobility technique so that you can go home safely. It's worth that extra little bit of risk.